Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. If you've never been here before, you're on Varietal Literature's YouTube page, a cozy corner of the internet for narrative. And what we do here on Thursday nights is we play a tabletop RPG, like a solo tabletop RPG, of a form that I'll get to. But if you do not want to watch me stumble through an intro, or at any point in there you're like, I don't care about the rules, I just want to get to the story or the writing or whatever else, the good news is if you're not watching live, you can click on the description below and there will be timestamps that'll take you to sort of key moments in the stream. If you are here live though, you do have one very distinct advantage, and that is you can join us in the live chat. And in the live chat is where you can give recommendations on the direction the story should go, how to interpret our prompts, things like that. And there's already a good crop of potatoes in there. GS says, oops, Rory's snoozing. Am I snoozing? I see Witchery, Zombie Wolf, GS, Tammy, and I think that's everybody for now in the chat, and good evening and thank you for watching. I see that we're talking about cake. I definitely like cake less since I can't have gluten now. Gluten is a big part of why cake is good. Some things it doesn't matter so much, but with cake it really does. All right, well, that's enough of me blabbing. Let's get to the lit games. This part of the show is called Lit Games. It stands for literature games, and it is my sort of catch-all phrase for a whole bunch of categories of solo games that you can find, solo indie games, whether that's lyric games, storytelling games, solo tabletop RPGs, things like that. There's a ton of different names for them. A lot of them come from itch.io, and a lot of them are fun, as we will see. But it is essentially a write-along. So let's get to what we're going to be writing along with. This one's a bit of a dark one. I will say that up front. Oh, Jimmy Doug is here. Hey, Jimmy Doug, it's good to see you again. Witchery says gluten is tasty. I agree. I will say that a lot of things don't need it as much as people claim it do. They do, but some things do. Okay, so Kieran's Doom is a dark RPG, and I'm going to tell you this right now so you can adjust your sensibilities. A lot of the stream is going to be setting it up, which does involve writing and creating the world and our expedition team and stuff like that. I think the setup's really interesting and is a lot of the game. But I do want to say that ahead of time, that the actual exploration will probably come fairly later in the stream. The second thing I will say is that we will have someone die, if not our entire team. It is guaranteed by how the mechanics are set up. This is, death doesn't necessarily have to be the bleakest thing in the world, so I won't say that it can't be cheerful, I guess. But it is basically based around Annihilation, which we've played other games that were based around Annihilation. Annihilation the movie, not the concept, although it could be about the concept. A movie and book, I should say. Very loosely, though, the other one was a lot more direct, in that you are a part of an expedition into some sort of strange thing, which is very open. They give us an image of one here, but that's just one. It's up to us to interpret what we're going to explore. With a team that other people have tried to explore, and they've all died and gone mad doing it. So, Witchery says, we murdering in Steeple's fingers. I mean, this thing, whatever it is doing the murdering. I don't think we'll get far enough that everyone will die, but I will say if you choose to play this game, which has, by the way, really interesting mechanics that only requires a deck of cards, so stick around if you want to hear about those. But yeah, I think if you actually played through the whole game, which would take a few hours, we're not going to get to the end of it, then you would almost certainly have no one left, just for how it's set up. Okay, so that's enough of me introducing it. Let's get to its color text, where I will tell you a little bit about its world and its concept. I'm going to do some explaining now. If you're not watching this live and you don't want an explanation of the game, you just want to get to mechanics, unlike most games, you really don't need... I won't be spending too much time explaining them, but you can go down to the timestamps and jump ahead if you don't care to know much about the rules. What I'm going to describe is how you set up the deck of cards for this, because I think it's interesting. And then we'll get to building our team and setting them off, and that's my main goal. So if you want, there will be a timestamp where we'll get to the writing, and that will be at the point where I actually start writing. Okay. So, there is a monument at the edge of civilization, an enigmatic structure known as Kieran's Doom. I believe this is a reference to the centaur god of knowledge, so I think it's Ki. But I guess technically we really don't know how ancient Greek is pronounced. We have guesses. But I'm going to say Kieran's Doom. Nobody knows what it does and who made it or why. It has defied all previous attempts at understanding. Countless expeditions have torn themselves apart trying to learn its secrets. There's no reason to believe your expedition will be any different, but here you are, 3 explorers standing before the monument, driven to where all others have failed. How much are you willing to sacrifice to solve the mystery of Kieran's Doom? Okay. So that's the text on it. So it is very Annihilation if you've ever watched that movie or read that book in its premise. But here's the first thing I'll say. I'm going to take the kind of Annihilation dark sci-fi perspective. I might be a little more alien in my, like the movies, in my conception of a dark sci-fi, but because I just like that world more, and I already have some stories I've built in my sort of loosely based on version of that world, which is my way of saying I have some thinly veiled fan fiction about Alien kicking around. But the truth is, actually, you're not really restrained in any way on how you interpret this, and they have in the end of this booklet, they have 3 I forget what they call them, but you could just think of them as like adventure packs or whatever, modules. They're only about a page long because of how the game works, but one of them is a medieval fantasy thing, so and another one is more lighthearted than that, also sci-fi. So it isn't really restrained in how you want to put it together. It doesn't have to be dark sci-fi. It's just a strange thing in the distance, and you're going to have to interpret its meaning. Okay. So let's talk about how to set up the deck of cards. If you are not a person who cares about mechanics of the game, give me like 6 minutes. Go get tea or something, and we'll get to the cool stuff after that. I like the mechanics, so I have to assume some people care about this. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is you need to split your deck of cards by its suits, which I've already done. So you're going to have a fourth of the deck in spades, 1/4 in clubs, 1/4 in hearts, and 1/4 in diamonds. Okay. I am one of the only people, and I'm not going to waste my time on this stream trying to defend it because I do understand the criticisms against it. But I am one of the only people I know who actually really liked Alien Covenant, which was the sequel to Prometheus. I didn't really like Prometheus. I liked it more when I watched it again some years later with no expectations. When I first saw it, I didn't like it. But I really liked Covenant, and I'm a defender of Covenant under the right circumstances, but at the same time, it's art, and I understand that the general opinion was people didn't like it. But I felt like if the purpose of Alien is to take like old concepts of horror and recast them in this universe of sort of retro sci-fi, where, you know, the first movie was a sort of stalker style movie, like Halloween. I know it predates Halloween, I think, but like it was like Halloween, except instead of Mike Myers, it's a space monster. That's basically what it was. Then I feel like what Alien Covenant was Frankenstein. It took the concept of Frankenstein and recast it in that world. So it was like gothic horror in a retro sci-fi setting, and it had a pretty good cast, and it's visually really nice, I think, and I think that's where a lot of the Alien movies succeed. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So I do enjoy it. But it's hard because I know I'm not the only person who really liked it, but I know most people don't. Anyways, that's not why we're here. Okay, so prepping your deck. Begin by separating out the suits into its own pile. Diamonds cards, which form the basis of your expedition deck, represent hard-won knowledge about the monument. The other suits, which form the basis of your disaster decks, represent various obstacles that you might encounter. And it doesn't really matter what they are right now: hearts, clubs, and spades. So here's the trick with this module. It does not use the whole deck. What it does is it pulls, you're going to pull a few specific cards. So the first thing we're going to pull is a King of Diamonds. You have to have that. And then you're going to pull a 2 of hearts, clubs, and spades from the disaster decks, so to speak. So you're going to have the 2 of clubs with your King of Diamonds. You're going to have the 2 of spades with your King of Diamonds and your 2 of clubs. And you're going to have your 2 of hearts with your King of Diamonds, 2 of spades, 2 of clubs, 2 of hearts. Okay? And then you're going to draw 5 more diamond cards randomly. So this is my diamond pack. I'm going to, I mean, you can see them, I can't. I'm going to draw this one. This one. This one. I don't know. This one. Is that 5? That's 4. This one. 5. Okay. You don't know what those 5 cards are. We're not going to get through all of them anyways. I meant to solder something on my mic, so I'm losing audio in one ear, which is surprisingly distracting. Okay, So with that, the King of Diamonds, the 5 more diamond cards drawn randomly, the 2 of Hearts, 2 of Clubs, and 2 of Spades, we have our basic expedition deck. Okay. Gonna put that aside. Now, we'll put the rest of the diamond cards aside. We don't need them for the rest of the game. Next thing we do is we draw from each of our disaster decks. We're going to draw the king of that suit and then 3 additional random cards. So I have the king of clubs, but we're going to keep this separate. King of clubs, and then you're going to draw 3 more random cards. Okay. Keep all of that face down and separate. The rest of them, put aside, they don't matter. The next one, going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the king of spades and then 3 randomly drawn cards out of this stack. Rest of the spades go to the side. They don't matter now. Going to do the same thing here with the hearts. King of hearts. And then 3 randomly drawn cards from the stack. Now I know what that card is, so I'm going to pre-draw it. It doesn't really matter that I know, but I just want to play this as honestly as possible. Okay, so you can't see it because I don't have a second camera, but the gist of it is I now have 3 little stacks of 4 cards that make up my disaster decks from spades, clubs, and hearts. And then I have this fatter stack of mix of cards called the expedition deck that is mostly diamonds, but also has the 2 of each of my disaster decks. Okay, now here's what's cool. Every time you draw a card from your expedition deck, that's a day's passing. And it will give you a prompt based on a prompt list. When you draw the 2 of, I don't know, whatever, 2 of clubs, 2 of spades, or 2 of hearts, a problem arises. You then take the deck associated to that. So if you drew the 2 of hearts, you would take the 2 of, or you would take the disaster deck of hearts, and you shuffle it into your expedition deck. And now whenever you draw a card for each day passing, there's a greater chance the disaster is going to happen because of something that's been triggered by the 2 that you had in here. It starts to form little storylines of the way things fall apart. And by the end, you will have shuffled in all 3 disaster decks, which means that while you're trying to find information, which is mostly what this deck is made of, it's going to have days and days of disaster between you and it. Every time... Witchery says the laptop would mutiny if you had a desk cam too. Yeah, it would just melt. Every time you draw a king, someone dies. So, expedition deck, disaster decks, until you draw their associated suit, disaster decks are not a part of the expedition. So it goes smoothly at first. And then as a problem happens, that problem starts to snowball. And that's the basic premise of the game, is that you are careening towards disaster. And I think the mechanics are really clever in how they do that. I'm going to shuffle the expedition deck. And I do appreciate, as GS says, it's pretty straightforward. I do appreciate that this is very straightforward. Okay. Oh yes, we're talking about what we're drinking tonight. Witchery has a chocolate frappe. Jimmy Doug says a quarter gallon of V. I don't know, like vodka. And Didn't see anybody else, but I have my usual boring Earl Grey. I promise I used to be interesting about tea. Okay. So now that we've built our deck, the truth is you're supposed to build the deck after you pick the team, but I wanted to put this together. I wanted to put the rules in the beginning so people could skip over them if they wanted. We have to make our team. Now the team does involve drawing cards. I'm just going to use my sort of leftover cards to do it, because it doesn't matter too much. Okay, so you draw 3 cards, and then they give you a sort of archetype from this. Jump Store says sparkling water because I hate still water with a passion. I don't hate still water, but I definitely prefer sparkling. Oh, not vodka, the energy drink. I am not familiar with it. Does it have a flavor, or is it like Red Bull where it's just Red Bull flavored? First card is an 8. Second card is a queen. Third card is a 7. Okay. Zombie Wolf says lavender tea because I've had a rough day. I don't want to pass out once the stream is over. It's okay if you pass out while the stream's on. I won't take it personal. Okay. So here is our first prompts for our explorers. And now, those of you who are interested in the writing process and want to participate, come back online. 7 is a priest of a forgotten god. Let me put that in our document. Number 8, an artist with uncanny vision. Uncanny, for those who don't know, means like the ability to see things that others can't in this sense, but in like a supernatural sense. Although uncanny has come to mean some other things over time. That is its traditional meaning. LaCroix Beach Plum. LaCroix isn't such a big thing up here, like the brand, but knockoffs of it is. And the last one is a queen. The wielder of a renowned weapon. Okay. Okay, folks. What's the name of the priest of a forgotten god? If you want to throw in the god's name and what its nature is, you can as well. Keeping in mind that I'm going for kind of a dark sci-fi tone. Spilled some tea. Or the artist with the uncanny vision, or the wielder of a renowned weapon. Priest of a forgotten god's a tougher one for me. The artist, I think, should be called Scarlet. The wielder of a renowned weapon. Considering that we're in like a setting of like industrial firearms, what would be a renowned weapon? What would make a weapon renowned in a dark sci-fi setting? Zombie Wolf says amnesianess or amnesian. I'm assuming that's a reference to amnesia, though. Witchery says Arthur. That's a good one. Just because it's very straightforward. How would I shorthand that? I guess it would be Ami. Whoop. Priest of a Forgotten God. Jimmy Doug says Galiflax, Priest of Suffocation. How about of Drowning? Galiflax, God of the Drowned. Okay, an artist with uncanny vision, the wielder of a renowned weapon. Any, it is funny though, because Scarlet is the name of an NPC in my D&D campaign, and one of my player characters is named Amadeus and goes by Ami, so it's like I have two of their names in here. I don't know what to do about the weapon. I mean, he's just gonna have a rifle, right? Well, like a space rifle. That's the problem. Like, you know, we're used to like swords having legends. I did write a tale once about a guy who downloaded his brain into a gun because he was stranded on a spaceship. He knew he was gonna die, his body anyways, and he knew that the one thing of great value to somebody on his ship was the weapon, so it was his most guaranteed way of being at least moved beyond the ship and carried on into the world. So it was a weapon with a mind of its own. I could do that. What was his name? Felix. That was the name of it. Zombie Wolf says, how about a glaive with lightsaber-esque properties? Ooh, lightsaber is a good call. Glaives are fun too. Gonna go with that. What would be the name of it? Let's just say glaive saber. Gia says, that's incredible, Rory. I'm glad you liked it. I ultimately didn't, and just, it's in my bin somewhere. My bin of unused stories. Zombie Wolf says, Caliburn. Good call. Excalibur. Except it looks like a cat. Okay, we have our folks. We'll get to know them as we go. Okay. Now we have to for those who don't know, Caliburn, I believe, I mean, I know it's the legendary sword, but I'm pretty sure it's King Arthur's legendary sword, but I don't trust my ability to name correct names. But it is what I believe. Is it the one he pulls from the swamp? Is that right? Or the one from the stone? Chat'll tell you. Recall is not my strength. Creation is. Oh, Caliburn was Excalibur's original name. Yeah, there you go. Now, the way I know Caliburn is one of my side hobbies is, and this is some real nerd stuff, modifying Nerf blasters. And in that community, there is a third-party, not for kids, super powerful 3D printed blaster named Caliburn, which I have somewhere around here, but I don't know. It wouldn't even, it's very long. It wouldn't fit on the screen anyways. One of the Larry N Studios new games is codename Excalibur. Says Ekurisona? Ekurisona? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm assuming you mean Larian, the people who just opened a studio in Poland and made Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity Original Sin. But maybe there's another studio I know. But the game is codename Excalibur. Oh, interesting. Also, thank you for watching. Okay, I'm getting so distracted for no good reason. We have to do the coolest thing. We have to build the monument. Okay, so I'm going to read this text, and now we're going to be humming. We have our team. Now we got to describe our monument. Curon's Doom is a unique edifice unlike any other in this world or beyond, far from the comfort of familiar places. The first glimpse of its alien features can drive an explorer to the heights of spiritual awe or the depths of atavistic terror. Well, that's straight out of Lovecraft there. He loved the word atavistic. What does Charon's Doom look like at first sight? Draw it, which I can't do because my computer will melt. Or find an image that sparks your imagination. Try Googling brutalist sculptures, crop circles, or aeroglyphs. So I do have some brutalist sculpture stuff that I was looking at here. I don't know that there's much that I found useful there. If you like, give the monument 3 descriptors from the following table, flip 3 random cards, or simply choose those that sound interesting to you. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick 3 random cards. Card number 1 is a 4 of hearts. Card the second is a 8 of spades. And card the third is a 7 of clubs. Okay, so let's start with the 4 of hearts there. 4 of hearts. Blossoming. Okay, it's blossoming. What exactly is blossoming and so on, we can decide. It is 8 of spades. Demonic. Okay. Ekurisona says yes, Larian. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. They said it's not like their other games, and it's not another Divinity Original Sin, and they don't want to do Baldur's Gate 3, or 4, rather. So I'm hoping it's good. And 7 of clubs is magnetic. Well, I didn't see that one coming. Okay. What's the term they use for this? For those who are having a hard time, like if you're not too if you're very image based or whatever, the cover art here is actually art that somebody did for this game of one idea of what the what it looks like, what the thing looks like. This one has, these are like their little adventures here. I'm not using one obviously because this is a creative focus stream. But there's one. There's another one done in a different art style. It's more like an old building, an old lighthouse rather. And then there's another one in a more sci-fi medieval fantasy style, and kind of Dark Soulsy, of another thing. So there are all these options we have, but we're gonna make our own. How about just a really massive and strange tree? How about just that as like the starting point? And then we can add on to that. It can be like infested with dark creatures or something like that, like termites. It can grow various flowers of various forms that could be living or not. I think there's a lot of flexibility in that. So I'm just going to very briefly sort of write a descriptive sentence of its basic form, and then let's get to the storytelling. Like I said, this is a very like setup based game. Monument. a tree that grew taller than the mountains and reaches beyond the clouds. It's winding. It's less a stump of bark and roots yet more winding tendrils of strange, colorful minerals. Tammy says, sounds good. Larian also confirmed they have 2 games in development that are both ambitious. Well, I mean, how... Baldur's Gate 3 was so ambitious that I believe them when they say it. They need to stop making good games because, like, I have a backlog. I'm still trying to get through mini games in Final Fantasy VII, the many games of Final Fantasy VII, and then I'm supposed to play Dragon's Dogma 2, which I got like 2 months ago now. And I still haven't finished Bloodborne, and I still haven't finished like 6 other things, and then they just put Dredge on PlayStation Plus, which I've always wanted to play. Stop it. Powerful magnet, like a gravitational pull. Good idea, guys. We can have it like stuff orbits it. Nearby the high peaks and cliffs tear away from their mountains and orbit the grand tree. This magnetism is poorly understood, but is presumed to be the reason communication is lost. By when previous teams entered. Okay, so I got a basic description there. We can expand on that as we go. All right, carrying on with the game. We have our thing. We have our explorers. Now, I think the first thing we have to do... Well, they want us to answer... So, I'm not going to do this with everybody because it just would be too long. I'm going to do this with one character, and we're going to kind of focus on that character. So we're going to have to pick a character to focus on. But we have to answer one of the following prompts from the perspective of each explorer. You should choose a different prompt for each explorer. But let's first of all choose which explorer do we want to be primarily from the point of view of. Obviously, because we're playing this solo, you can play this with multiple people and they each play an explorer. But because we're playing this solo, and because I kind of want the confinement of a third-person limited perspective, we're going to pick somebody. Larian should run a Kickstarter that would let us pay them to stop making games for about 5 or 10 years so we can finish our backlogs. Yeah, it's going to take like a year to finish Baldur's Gate 3 alone. Totally agree. Okay. What do we care about? Who do we see the most potential as a character, as a point of view for the audience? I feel like Scarlet has promise. An artist with uncanny vision, because an artist is primarily an observer, right? Jumpstore says they're getting buffering, so if I stop responding, you'll all know why. Let me make sure it's not me. No, it looks like I'm good. Sorry to hear that. So we have Ami, Scarlet, and Arthur. Vote is for Arthur, Zombie Wolf says. Okay, that's one vote for Arthur. Witcher says BG3, Baldur's Gate 3 is great if you can't get a tabletop RPG group, to be honest. Yeah, or if you are frustrated by the idea that you have to be a team player. It's like D&D if you just want it to be about you. Jumpstore says maybe Arthur. Okay, 2 votes for Arthur. Arthur, the wielder of a glaive saber. Okay, so now we got to answer a question about Arthur. I'm going to read the questions off. If one really resonates with you, just tag it in the chat. I'll look at the chat once I'm done reading the list. What drove you to seek out Curon's Doom? What great sacrifice did you make to join this expedition? We can only answer one of these. Why do you distrust one of the other explorers? What feelings are you hiding from one of the other explorers? Why? What is the one thing you'll never give up? What is the one line you'll never cross? What is the promise you've sworn to fulfill? Who have you promised it to? What secret are you hiding from the other explorers? How are you connected to Curon's Doom? And we're not going to spend too long answering them, obviously, because we're like 40 minutes in. So I knew this game would have a long setup, though. Okay, we got a vote for secret. What secret are you hiding from the other explorers? We got a vote for distrust the other explorers. I mean, it is possible for me to bundle these together. What secret are you hiding? Okay. 2 votes for secret. 3 votes for secret. Let's go with secret then. What secret are you hiding? And maybe I can make it so that the secret is something that causes you to distrust others. So what secret is Arthur hiding? What secret are you hiding? I have an idea, but I'm not going to say it just yet. I want to see if people have an idea. What secret should Arthur, wielder of the legendary glaive, have? Jimmy Doug says secret as well. Okay, we're on track. Your secret is that you distrust the other explorers, GS says. Ikunarisona says, what does an artist need a glaive saber for? The artist is the other one. Arthur is just a person who has the glaive saber. That's their only trait. Everybody wants D&D to be just about them. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. We just want to know the gossip. Okay. Okay. Here's what I'm going to say. I pretend to be a brave knight, but I was a scoundrel bandit who killed the brave knight to get this blade. That's my vote. Pitbull Mancer. I don't know what Pitbull Mancer is. Sorry to say. I mean, I know what a Mancer is. I'm going to Google it. Okay, nobody seems to be objecting to that. Okay, let's get to it. That's our secret. All right. Jimmy Doug says half brother to the priest. Oh, interesting. Butcher says maybe he's not even really Arthur. Maybe he stole his identity. GW says his secret is that he doesn't know how to use the glaive because he stole it from the knight. He's been faking knowing how to use the glaive and nobody has noticed it yet. Also, hello GW. Thanks for watching. Okay. Everybody put a secret in the chat from one of your tabletop characters. He knows what others are really thinking, but not who those thoughts belong to. And someone is a traitor. Oh, that's a great idea. A Curisona says, wait, is Arthur an artist? No. The artist is Scarlet. He knows what the others are really thinking. I do like that idea, Zombie Wolf. I do like that idea. It's a really strong idea. We'll see if I can work it in. I like all of these ideas. He doesn't know how to use the glaive, or maybe he uses it like the weapons he knows how to use, which are usually like short swords if you don't have professional training. Narcissistic murder hobos. I do all I can as a GM to discourage that kind of game. I like all these ideas. I'm going to get bogged down. I'm going to keep coming back to this pool though, so I'm copying them all. Yeah, if I don't end up using your Zombie Wolf, it's mainly because I think it's a story in itself. Hey, what the? I said copy. And it might be just too much to get across now. Okay, whatever. There we go. Now I have a record of it. Let's get to the story. You're playing an evil character because I'm the GM. Well, right now I am because I'm playing Ball right now. They're fighting Ball. Pictomancer, not Pitbullmancer. Oh, okay. That makes quite a bit more sense. Okay. Let's just get to it. And it's pretty simple play. Despite all that setup, it's pretty simple play. All we do is we pull cards off the top of our expedition deck. We consult the table for the card that we look at, and we write a little entry about our prompt. The one thing we do have to do is our arrival. And it gives us a couple of prompts there, like the prologue. What do we eat before we go in? And it wants us to do 3 small vignettes, but again, for time's sake, I'm just going to do the one vignette on the one character, which is Arthur. Okay, so we're in a dark sci-fi world that obviously has some sort of fantasy tabletop RPG elements, because we have, you know, like sword but laser. It seems to be the description of the world that we've created so far. We have a weird priest, we have an artist, and we have our knight, who is a scoundrel and maybe can read thoughts. We'll see how this plays out. They are just setting up camp at the base of the tree. What? Whatever, let's write. Day 1. I was the... I don't want to do first person. Let's do... Arthur was the first to arrive. He was used to living in the wilds. Near Empyreans. Pretty sure that's already a thing, but near Empyreans. Freighter stop. On the moon. The one on Jupiter's moons. Not the far. Not the outer ring. Out there, the strange creatures. You slept in the day. That proved a habit too hard for Arthur to break. Zombie Wolf says, I'm a novice writer, so I definitely know how to tell a good story. Well, I'm not a novice writer, and I don't know how to tell a good story, so good for you. Maybe you're doing better than you think. That proved a habit too hard for Arthur to break. So he was here. After taking the midnight shuttle. Going anywhere. After taking the midnight shuttle to the base of the monument. It was a winding knot. Of vegetation. That reached above the clouds and had a powerful magnetism that tore away at the stones, at the mountains about it. Those chunks of stone laced with iron swirled about the awesome trunk of the tree, like so many moons around the planet. GW says arrives early with a smoothie instead of late with Starbucks. Is that Arthur? Or are we talking about Scarlet? Eku says the secret would be that Arthur and Scarlet are the same person. One of them is a thrall. Arthralet. I like that. Jumpstore says, I too have lost many a fight to autocorrect. Yeah. Is autocorrect helpful? I think at one point it was. You know when autocorrect really mattered? Was when you had to type in messages on your phone by using a number pad and pressing it multiple times. So having like autocorrect so you didn't have to push 16,000 keystrokes to do anything was helpful. But I feel like by the time that we've gotten to like having swipe and stuff on our phones, it's less relevant. GS says the one who conquers autocorrect gets to marry the king's daughter. That's if you guys watch on Tuesdays is Fireside Fairy Tales, and there's lots of stories like that. Arthur decided. Arthur watched the suns rise behind the behemoth of a tree. Then began his morning ritual, warming up with his glaive, Caliburn. Caliburn was a modified titanium pole arm with a, I don't know what's a fancy sci-fi word, displacement blade that was heated by refined sunstone, whatever. Echo says that can there be an Earth-like forest out there in outer space like there is on that other planet Earth? I can only roleplay in the forest in the condition I forget what the doctor calls it. Of course. Of course. I also really like forests. Caliburn was a modified titanium polearm with a displacement blade that was heated by refined sunstone. If you weren't... Actually, I got a different idea to speed this along. Why is it humming? Someone said to Arthur, startling him. GW says displacement blade makes it sound like a giant box cutter. Maybe that's what it was. Transmigration star plasma. Why is it humming? Someone said to Arthur, startling him. He's spun around, drawing the crackling glaive towards the woman. She was demure in posture, but had an intense stare. That more than compensated Echo says, hey, is everybody in here AI or are there any other humans? I don't have any humans, no. Is this a test? No, I promise you no AI on this stream. She was demure in posture, but had an intense stare that more than compensated. Who are you? Demanded Arthur. Who are you? She responded with indignation at his curt manner, then walked on away from his blade towards the camp. I mean, I can guess that you're Arthur, because I'm pretty sure that glaive is Caliburn. That is the infamous Caliburn you're wielding. Witchery says, I'm a witch. The real question is, Witchery, what era of witch are you? Are you the era of witches where you go and party with the devil in a cave and turn into black cats? Or are you one of these, like, 90s sitcom witches? Not sitcom, I guess, like teen drama witches? Or are you like a 60s sitcom witch? What witch are you? Jimmy Doug says checkbox if human. Aku says the evil magnetic blossom should interfere with the glazed power source. Good idea. We need to get to this tree. I'm gonna sort of shortchange this intro. It's not wrong, your boy. Famous, you mean? Arthur said. Famous for killing. The woman responded with disdain. That's what weapons do. Yes, Arthur said. I'm Scarlet. She answered. And I'm here to draw the inconceivable. Witchery says, I'm the village witch. People fear me, but need me. I like that. I'm Scarlet, she answered, and I'm here to draw the inconceivable. I'm Scarlet. Because apparently cameras don't work in there. Arthur checked a data pad. And pulled up her dossier to confirm. Her hair was longer. But her short nose and thin lips were distinct enough to confirm her identity. Some Store says, I agree with GS Zombie. I think you've thought up a lot of great stuff for our live streams. I think everybody in my wonderful little chat has come up with great stuff. Glinda Voice says, but are you a good witch or a bad witch? That's not a good Glinda. I don't think I really have an imitation of that to go, though. Okay. Scarlet made a stew of greens. She collected from a moldering from a pit of deadfall near camp. The soup was bitter, but a good respite from the chilled winds of that planet. How did you know what greens to pick? Arthur asked, after a long stretch of silence. Are you local? I didn't. Scarlet answered. Arthur looked on, suddenly horrified, and said, Witchery says, Roy, that was terrible. You're clearly a bad witch. Yeah, I think I'm a pretty bad witch. She's the Sand Witch of Sauron, says Echo. You fed me strange plants? What if we die? What if you poisoned me? Echo says that was a TV reference. TV is what they had back in the 1900s before AI. Witcher says, listen, if I could twitch my nose and make things happen, I'd be in pure bliss. I'd also probably be kidnapped by the CIA. Zombie Wolf says, even though the show was in black and white, I actually like seeing reruns of the show. I've seen it in color. We're talking about Bewitched, right? I think not all the seasons were in color, but I've definitely seen color seasons. Maybe they were colorized later? I mean, I watched it in the 90s when they were having like a thing coming back up. Jimmy Doug says, Scarlet seems very nonchalant. Yeah, unperturbed. Scarlet's the one that can see uncanny things, and I feel like that would make her less concerned with the moment-to-moments of the material world. You're walking into a tree that no one has ever returned from. Arthur, she said with sudden intensity. Poisoning is the least of our worries. Also, though, I can just sense things about living matter. I cannot know these are fine, but I have no meaningful way to persuade you of that. So feel free to go vomit it up. I don't care. Yeah, Jump Store. Took the words out of my mouth. Arthur didn't know how to respond to this. It made him angry. But also curious about what exactly she could see that he couldn't. He then decided to go vomit the soup up at the edge of the Green Sea. A few minutes down a game trail from camp. Eku says, does Scarlet have a weapon? I think most people don't have weapons. But, you know, we can always give her one. Part of him didn't want to insult someone who might be able to crush his mind or read it or something with her uncanny life powers, her uncanny powers. It was at the edge of the Green Sea. Jumpstore says her imagination-powered paintbrush is a weapon not to be underestimated. And Echo says, I like that. It's a good idea. Echo says, the Stewmancer. Ha! What a great idea. I'm gonna make a character for D&D, not so much for this, but for D&D that that somehow has stew-based attacks. It's going to be obviously a character that already exists, but everything's going to be reinterpreted as a stew. Okay, it was at the edge of the Green Sea. That Arthur encountered the cloaked silhouette of a man. He was staring out over the wide horizon of the water. Arthur recognized him immediately. From the dossiers. Hey, you're... He paused and tried to find the right shape for his tangled tongue. Nessie Ami. The priest? What was his name again, properly spelled? Turned slowly towards Arthur and pulled back the dark blue hood woven hood of his cloak. He was an aged man, probably pushing 70 years to Arthur's estimation, by Arthur's estimation. And was gaunt to the point of concern. His cheekbones were less feature in the geometry of his face and more a shelf from which leathered cloth draped. Jump Store says probably pushing 70 years. Now watch him turn out to be 23. I'm kind of having in my mind that his age is hard. His god is above drowning, right? That's got to take a toll. We're on the same wavelength there, Jump Store. I don't know if I'll actually get to any features. As you can see, we're already at like an hour and 20. I do want to at least get through the first day of exploration. Echo says, can she use one of those corrupt metal flowers as a wand? Where does she already have a wand? Echo, the way it works on this stream is yes, she can, because you had the idea. But the other way it works on this stream is I sometimes forget. So I apologize if once we're in the tree, I forget that. His eyes were dark, like the depths of the sea. GS says, where does the time go? Well, what happened was the game has a lot of setup. The game, actually, I'm not only for, this is only a problem for when you're streaming, the setup way. The way it actually is done is actually quite clever. I think if you are a person who makes indie tabletop RPGs, you could take a few ideas from how they've worked out their tutorial. It's not the first time I've seen it. I think I also saw it on the one that was I forget its name, but it's based on can I remember anything's name? The Ghibli movie about the young witch. We played a game back in August of last year that was that way. And the way it's works is that instead of explaining a bunch of mechanics to you, the first rounds of play introduce the mechanics as you go. So we've kind of been playing it, but we've also kind of been learning it. Arthur realizes that his vomit is no different from the green sea. Good point, because he was eating greens. I don't like. Did you know that for a long time, and used in a simile was considered ungrammatical, or not ungrammatical, but bad style? You would only use as, and then like or as came on. His eyes were dark as the depths of the sea. He parted his cracked lips and said, Arthur, I know you must help me pray. Hey, we have camp just up the hill, Arthur said, uncomfortable with the way this man the tone. Jess says, yes, my English teacher hated the word like and would freak out. And you know what? Yeah, who says your English teacher sounds like an English teacher? That just goes to show. Here is my pet peeve. People are putting their pet peeves in here. I have basically one massive pet peeve. And that is when people confuse grammar with style. Or style with grammar, rather. For example, ending a sentence with a preposition. Completely fine. In fact, done all the time, and often trying to avoid it makes a sentence even harder to read. It's a style thing to not end a sentence with a preposition, and it gets taught sometimes as grammar, but that's not what grammar is. And also language, I don't know, language doesn't need defending. Like, I don't understand the idea of defending language. A lot of grammar came from, like, some not so great ideas in history. I should say the idea of style as grammar came from some not so great ideas in history. The truth is if you're a native speaker of a language, it's pretty hard for you to be non-grammatical. There's a bunch of ideas from the turn of the century. Oh my God, I'm getting off track. I gotta stop. I did a double major in philosophy and psychology. In the last 2 years, my schooling was first philosophy of language for like a straight year, and then psychology of language for a straight year. I know too much about this. But just, you're gonna have to trust me. That's not how grammar works. GS says not ending a sentence with a preposition has been branded on you. Yes, and it's a shame because they're perfectly comprehensible, and many good sentences may have been lost. You must hold my face in the tide until I am peaceful. Then lay me upon the sand. Arthur. If I say it, Zombie Wolf, I'm sure YouTube will flag me, but I think I have. Yeah. I think the question anybody should ask themselves before they start correcting someone's grammar is, what am I trying to accomplish? Because that language doesn't need defending. If you comprehended what they said, the real question is, what are you trying to do? And the answer usually is not so complimentary. Yeah, okay, that's the one I've seen. Yeah. So a lot of college humor videos are very good. I only found out recently that it was started by Will Ferrell. I feel like I probably knew that at one point. You must hold him. He said with a hollow smile. Yeah, Witchery says, people try to make others feel small because they don't speak or write good. Yeah, it's a lot of superiority is what it is. I'm not saying that grammar is irrelevant. I will say that if you're a writer, it helps to know grammar, because grammar also contains ideas of how to structure thoughts and words that can be very helpful if that's what you're into. But if you're just talking to people on the street and you're like, actually, just stop. You're not helping anyone. Don't do that. Let people express themselves. You'll get more honesty out of them if they aren't trying to dance around your expectations. This concludes Rory's public service announcement that no one asked for. Yeah, and I think that's a bit of a different context. Witchery, fussing about it is editing. Yeah, that's different because I won't be there to follow up with questions or whatever else. Communicating through writing is a bit of a different thing. You only have one chance to do that. Writers have a greater burden to try and match a certain code that most of society shares. But if you're just talking to people, stop it. Just stop doing it. Ami said with a hollow smile, lots of brilliant people have said things with bad grammar. And bad style. Okay, you must hold on. You want me to drown you? And then leave you on the shore? Arthur said with a face contorted into with an incredulous tone? Incredulous tone. And a raised eyebrow. Galafax will recommend me to your side or to the great sea. 'Tis his choice I surrender to. There you go. Preposition. Aku says back in the 1900s, people didn't use like as. I do like how you put that together. Yeah. How things get used changed. Language is a tool, not a marker of your status. Although it has been used as a marker of status, because it used to be quite expensive to go and learn grammar, for example. And that was very helpful in a time when you didn't have, well, it was helpful for a certain class of people, in a time when you didn't have, the ability to check out people. You were more vulnerable to people trying to con you out of stuff, I guess, if you were a rich person. So if you went to a party, the dialects mattered, and some of those dialects and use of language were purposely complex, because the only way you would learn that style of speaking was you paid a good deal of money to learn it. And so then you get vulgar language, which we've now sort of pushed off to being like swear words and whatever else. But vulgar language, vulgar just is Latin for common. That was commoners' language. And if they spoke vulgarly, then you knew they weren't coming from money. Galafax will recommend me to your side or to the great sea. 'Tis his choice I surrender to. Ami said, spreading wide his arms and turning back towards the sea. What is a Galafax? Asked Arthur. Oh, good point. You see, GS, you're clever. That would have been a much easier way for me to explain this. That's the entire premise of My Fair Lady. Yes. Tis the god of oblivion, the master of drowning. From suffocation, so we are born, and to it we shall surrender again. Tommy said. Then lay me up on the sandwich. So we are born, and to it we shall surrender again. Okay, and you were cleared for this mission, yeah? Arthur said. But Ami did not acknowledge. Hey, when's the official start of summer? Is it June or July? I should know this, but it's just a thing that never sticks in my mind. Or has it already started? Like, that's how far off the mark I am. I don't think it has. Okay, and you were cleared for this mission, yeah? By the corporations and psychologist. I mean, Jumpstore says June. Thank you, Jumpstore. Do you guys know if it what's date specifically in June? June 21st. Okay, let me check something. So Friday. For the first time in my history of this show, I am thinking ahead. Maybe in 3 weeks then? I think we'll return to Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop for another season. I think the next season we're doing of that is called Burn. Now, our wildfire season in BC tends to be in August, but I don't want to wait till August. There's 2 seasons that are kind of summer in that game, so because there's 5 seasons in the game. But yeah, I think we'll go back to Fox Curio in around the start of summer. For those who don't know, we've done 2 before, and they are very popular, but also I just enjoy doing them. But Ami did not acknowledge. Instead, knelt in the water. And bowed, then bowed into its suffocating tides. Arthur did the only thing that made sense to him. He swung the dull end of the polearm against the base of the old man's skull, just hard enough to knock him out, so he could drag him back to camp. The encounter was strange enough that Arthur forgot to vomit up his soup. By then, it was midday, and he had to rest. Tomorrow, they would depart. Two. Okay. My God, I'm running out of time. I'm going to draw a card. I'm going to shuffle them again. In our expedition deck, I'm going to draw a card. We're going to deal with what we find. It's a 10 of diamonds. Let's go and look at our prompts, because that is, of course, the actual point of this. Diamonds. The explorers learn a method for safely interacting with the monument, touching it, interfacing with it, or otherwise physically engaging with it. What are the necessary conditions? Well, we could use this for a way to like get inside. I'm afraid this will have to be brief because I spent too long introducing people. What are our ideas, chat? Explorers learn a method for safely interacting with the monument, touching it, interfacing with it, or otherwise physically engaging with it. What are the necessary conditions? So it's a big tree. They're at the base of it. You're trying to find how to get inside. Other people have gone to this tree before, so maybe they find tattered notes from a previous team. But the question is, what is the secret here? What do they have to know about getting in or dealing with the monument? We've also established that like the artist is like a plant reader, so we could use that as well. Must be wet with the green sea. Echo with a great idea. I could just hack at it. This thing will cut anything. Arthur said, smiling at his humming glaive. GW says have to get through a barrier. However we want to conceive it, we did say it was like winding tendrils, so maybe they have to draw back, or maybe we have to, there's an opening in them that we don't see, or whatever. Zombie Wolf says, if it's a reference to Curon, maybe the notes will mention some tests from Curon himself. I think the name Curon's Doom is about how the pursuit of knowledge dooms you. I think that's what they're trying to say with the name. I don't think it's a specific reference to the god. We certainly can make reference to the god. I'm not precluding that. But I think that's what the name means. Because it's about being curious to the point that you go somewhere where you're almost going to get killed. Certainly going to get killed. Oh, like the riddle of the Sphinx, yeah. Just like the riddle of the Sphinx in Super Mario Odyssey. I mean, it is in Super Mario Odyssey. I am aware that's not the only place it is. Don't. Scarlet said, staring past him at the wide tree with dilated pupils. GW says, maybe if you don't perceive the barrier, it's not there. Is there a way we can work that in with the sea thing? Because I do like the idea of the sea. I have like half an idea. Arthur assumed this was her magic perception. But since he had not gotten sick from last night's stew, he was inclined to believe her. Zombie Wolf says, oh, I see, Rory. I thought Kiron's Doom was the name of the place. I think they do name it Kiron's Doom, but I think the idea is that that's not like a name that it gave itself or something. It's because they keep sending expeditions in of curious people and they die. So they just have colloquially landed on the name Kiron's Doom. But there's nothing that stops us from saying it's Kiron's Doom on some other deeper level. Maybe dunk yourself into the sea to invoke sensory deprivation. How about this? How about the barrier is just increasingly thick things that we perceive as biting flies or something? He was inclined to believe her. Okay, let me add that to the top. Change it around a bit. As they stepped closer to the tree, following along the coast line of the Green Sea, a swarm of black biting flies grew thicker and thicker. They were swift and seemed impossible to perceive clearly. As they grew, as they neared the gonna use a term that they use in folklore a lot, when they were within a rifle shot of it, the cloud had become so thick they were blinded and deafened by it. Wandering, aimless, and winding up, back out, facing away from it. That is to say, everyone but Ami. Eku says, the essence of the green seawater causes the roots to animate and recoil that tree and sea and have symbiotic relation, and that the tree continues to grow as long as the sea hoards all the green essence for itself, the only colored sea in these lands. But there are other colors. Oh, interesting. Jumpstore says, H.P. Lovecraft, The Color from Outer Space, anyone? Yeah. I agree with those vibes. I like that idea, Echo. The old priest walked on ahead. As if there were no barriers at all. Hey! Arthur called. How are you doing that? I don't know if I'm going to use this part. We'll see. Come back to it. He looked back, confused. The flies! They're so thick I can't see. Arthur said. Scarlet swatted about at the air, seemingly oblivious to all other matters. Galafax protects me. The priest finally said with a revelatory smile, and brushed at his cheek, where the green sea mucus still clung. As a baby's, as the membrane does to the newborn. I think we have to dunk ourselves in that gross sea. Scarlet said with a sneer. Arthur tried striking at the swarming flies a few times before relenting that the sea was his only real option for progress. Jumpstore says, one of the things I really loved about The Color from Outer Space is that it never occurred to the family to just move away. They just accepted their fates immediately. Well, you know, sometimes as a writer, you gotta get, you gotta hope the audience doesn't care. So you don't have to write too much. The seawater was nothing like that of home. It was bitter, like weeds, and clung Eku says, we'll be like flies in a witch's bruise, but who's the witch? Scarlet exclaimed, Reference to the conversation we were having earlier. And then Glinda will come. The cedar was nothing like that of home. It was bitter like weeds and clung off us. As kelp. As sun-bleached kelp to a limestone cliff. Is this even water? Arthur mumbled as he followed along behind Scarlet. Obviously not. Scarlet said with irritation. The effect of the sea was more profound than either of them had expected. It did not merely cling, but it dampened the senses. Their vision was stained with an emerald glow, and their hearing was muffled. As if they were still swimming. Somehow, though, they no longer perceived the biting flies. And the remainder of the day was spent reaching the base, which proved much farther than Arthur had estimated. I am curious what the next card is. When Zombie Wolf says, "Is this even water?" Rory just unintentionally horrified me. Not unintentional. I'm picking descriptions and stuff that are meant to be unsettling. Echo says, "It had to have been at some point, but the tree would have needed all that to grow to this size. This isn't essence, this is putrid." That's good. I like that. I'm going to work that in something. I can work that in here. Yuck, is that thing a giant amoeba? I wouldn't say I've decided, but that's definitely where I started to lean. So the point of the game... I'm going to have to end the game because we're at 2 hours and I have to go pick someone up. But the point of the game is basically as you go through this deck of cards, you will weave together the mystery. And like some of the stuff that Echo is saying is right in line with what this game's about. You know, unveiling as we go along with the prompts, trying to figure out what the mystery of this thing is, whether it's cosmic or in this case, I think we're going with a sort of strange form of life. Amoeba? Good joke. Okay. Well, let's read back what we have. Oh yeah, I was going to see what the next card was. It's a 4 of diamonds? What was that? The explorers find a clue left behind by a previous expedition. What is it? What do the explorers think happened in the previous expedition? There you go. Well, we're not doing that though, because we're out of time. Okay. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's just because you want to know what we came up with. And what we came up with was based on prompts from a game called Curon's Doom, which is a game about a big, terrible monument of some sort, which you get to decide what it is. It requires a deck of cards. You get prompts from the deck of cards. That deck of cards will give you prompts, and from those prompts we created a monument of our own. We created our own team of characters, 3 people, and did a little bit of introduction and prologue work, which is in the game itself. And then we finally sort of started the expedition, which is about as far as we got, because there was a fair bit of setup and all that. If you're wondering if I recommend the game, I really do. If you like the dark sci-fi stuff and you like something that's very creative and writing heavy, there isn't really any real mechanics to it. There isn't a lot of like decisions or resources to manage or anything like that. But it is, as far as a story prompt kind of thing, and wanting to occupy a character in a sort of Annihilation-esque setting, I think it was very good. I think the way that it does its increasing chaos mechanic of how it organizes the cards was very smart. With that said, let's read our story. I called this playthrough We All Die, because that is almost a guarantee in this game. And these are just some notes we came up with. Day 1. Let me put in my Space Stream stuff. Music. Day 1. Arthur was the first to arrive. He was used to living in the wilds near Empyrean's freighter stop, the one on Jupiter's moons, not in the outer rings. And out there, among the vicious things of the alien jungle, you slept in the day, not the evenings. This proved a habit too hard for Arthur to break, so he was here after taking the midnight shuttle to the base of the monument. Ah, yeah. The monument. The reason we were here. It was really a winding knot of vegetation that reached out above the clouds and had a powerful magnetism that tore away at the mountains about it, whose chunks of stone laced with iron swirled about that awesome trunk like so many moons around a planet. Arthur watched the suns rise behind the behemoth of a tree, then began his morning ritual of warming up with his glaive, named Caliburn. Caliburn was a modified titanium polearm with a displacement blade that was heated by refined sunstone. "Why is it humming?" someone said to Arthur, startling him. He spun around, drawing the crackling glaive towards the woman. She was demure in posture, but had an intense stare that more than compensated for it. "Who are you?" demanded Arthur. "Who are you?" she responded with indignation at his curt manner, then walked on away from him towards the camp. I mean, I guess I can guess that you're Arthur, because I'm pretty sure that is the infamous Caliburn that you're wielding. "Famous, you mean?" Arthur said. "Famous for killing," the woman responded with disdain. "Well, that's what weapons do, yes." "I'm Scarlet," she answered flatly. "I'm here to draw the inconceivable, because apparently cameras don't work in that big tree." Arthur surreptitiously checked a data pad and pulled up her dossier, confirming her identity. Her hair was longer, but she had a short nose and thin lips that were distinct enough for him to confirm it. Scarlet then proceeded to make a stew of greens she collected from a pit of deadfall near camp. The soup itself was bitter, but a good respite from the chilled winds of that planet. "How did you know what greens to pick?" Arthur asked after a long stretch of silence. "Are you local?" "I didn't," Scarlet answered. Arthur looked on suddenly horrified and said, "You fed me strange plants? What if we die? What if you poison me?" "You're walking into a tree that no one has ever returned from, Arthur," she said with sudden intensity. poisoning is the least of your worries. Also, though, I can just sense things about living matter. I know these are fine, but I have no meaningful way to persuade you of that, so feel free to go vomit it up. I don't care. Arthur didn't know how to respond to this. It made him angry, but also curious about what exactly she could see that he couldn't. He then decided that to vomit the soup up at the edge of the Green Sea, whose coast was a few minutes' walk down a game trail from the camp. Part of him didn't want to insult someone who might be able to crush his mind or read it or something with these apparently uncanny powers she had. But it was at the edge of the Green Sea that Arthur first encountered the cloaked silhouette of a man. This man was staring out over the wide horizon of the strange water. Arthur recognized him immediately from the dossiers. Hey, you're... He paused and tried to find the right shape for his tangled tongue. Ami the priest. Amnesianess. See, I'm no better than him. Turned slowly towards Arthur and pulled back his dark blue woven cloak. Hood of his cloak, sorry. Pulled back his dark blue woven hood of his cloak. He was an aged man, probably pushing 70 years by Arthur's estimation, was gaunt to the point of concern. His cheekbones were less a feature in the geometry of his face and more a deep shelf from which his flesh draped. His eyes were dark as the depths of the sea. He parted his cracked lips and said, Arthur, you must help me pray. Hey, we have camp set just up the hill, Arthur said, uncomfortable with how Ami emphasized the word pray and trying to change the subject. You must hold my face in this tide until I am peaceful. Then lay me upon the sand, Arthur, Ami said with a hollow smile. You want me to drown you and then leave you on the shore, Arthur said with an incredulous tone and a raised eyebrow. Galafax will recommend me to your side, or to the side of the great sea. 'Tis his choice I surrender to, Ami said, spreading wide his arms and turning back towards the sea. What is a Galafax? Asked Arthur, who wished he hadn't come to the beach at this point. 'Tis the god of oblivion, the master of drowning. From suffocation so we are born, and to it we shall surrender again, Ami said. Okay. And you were cleared for this mission, yeah? By the corporation's psychologist, Arthur said, but Ami did not acknowledge, and instead knelt in the water and then bowed his head into its suffocating tides. Arthur did the only thing that made sense to him. He swung the dull end of his polearm against the base of the old man's skull just hard enough to knock him right out so that he could drag him back to camp before he drowned himself. The encounter, though, was strange enough that Arthur just plumb forgot to vomit up his soup. By then it was midday and he had to rest. Tomorrow they would depart. Day 2. As they stepped closer to the tree, following along the coastline of the Green Sea, a swarm of black biting flies grew thicker and thicker. They were swift and seemed impossible to perceive clearly. When they were within a rifle shot of the base of the grand tree, the cloud had become so thick they were blinded and deafened by it, wandering aimlessly and winding back out, facing away from it if they tried to persist away from the tree. That is to say, everyone but Ami, the priest. That old priest walked on ahead as if there were no barriers at all, no bugs or anything. Hey! Arthur called. How are you doing that? Ami looked back, confused. The flies! They're so thick I can't see! How can you see? Arthur said. Scarlet was swatting about at the air around her, seemingly oblivious to all other matters, least of all this conversation. "Galafax protects me," the priest finally said with a revelatory smile, and brushed at his cheek where the green sea's mucus still clung as a membrane does to the newborn, even though it had been a full day since he had dunked himself into it. "I think we have to dunk ourselves in that gross sea," Scarlet said with a sneer. Arthur tried striking at the swarming flies a few times with his humming glaive, before relenting that the sea was really the only option for progress. The seawater, though, was nothing like that of home. It was bitter like weeds and clung to them as sun-bleached kelp to a limestone cliff. "Is this even water?" Arthur mumbled as he followed along the beach behind Scarlet. "Obviously not," Scarlet said with irritation. "It had to have been at some point, of course, but the tree would have needed all of it to grow to that size. This isn't essence. This is putrid." The effect of the sea, though, was more profound than either of them had expected. It wasn't clear if it was poison or something else, but it did not merely cling. Rather, it dampened the senses. Their vision was stained with an emerald glow, and their hearing was muffled as if they were still swimming in it. Somehow, though, they were no longer perceiving the biting flies, and the remainder of their day was spent reaching the base of the grand tree, which proved much farther than Arthur had estimated earlier. And that's as far as we got. There was a bit of setup with this game, that's why we didn't make it so far. I think it does clock pretty well. I do want to say that the creator of the game, in their notes on the game, recommends you play this on an actual day-to-day level. So what he recommends is you make your decks, and then you kind of make an entry for a day, and then you leave it aside, and then you come back to it a day later, and you pull another card and to find out more about the monument. And he said it's a good way to simulate the sort of draw of knowledge, trying to figure out the mystery of the monument. And I think I don't know what their pronouns are. They, him, he, she. I think they are correct. I think that that is probably a fun way to play a game like this. It's also lower commitment. Obviously, you don't need to write like I do. I'm trying to write in a way that I understand. I'm a writer, I write stories. But understand that solo tabletop RPGs are primarily role-playing games, and you can just make these simple journaling activities that no one will ever see. Yeah, that's probably more what these games are built around. Eku says, "Nice work crafting all that, handling the game, and incorporating all the AI bots in chat. 36 credits will be deposited in your account." Well, thank you very much. If somebody wants to deposit 36 credits, I do technically have in the description below a coffee, a buy me a coffee thing. But no, nobody needs to buy me anything. That's okay. Zombie Wolf's random trivia, who Zombie Wolf gives us random trivia every stream. Violet Jessup survived not only the sinking of the Titanic, I think I know this story, but also the sinking of the Titanic's two sister ships, the Olympic and the Britannic. She almost didn't get her job as a maid because she was apparently too attractive, and her employers were worried she would attract too much of the wrong kind of attention. Well, I didn't know the second half. Zombie Wolf loved the atmospheric music choice. Well, thank you. Jum Store says, "Good night. Can't wait to see you all again next week." Indeed. Tammy says, "Good night, everyone. Was a fun and informative night. Love it. I hope everyone has sweet, sweet dreams, and see you all on Tuesday." Yeah, I hope you feel better, Tammy. GS says, hello to Uncle Kitty. Everyone say hello to Uncle Kitty. He does talk to us in the comments of the videos. If you ever want to go back and say hello to him, that's another way you could do it. GW says, "Thank you, lovely storyteller." Oh, well, that's a very kind thing of you to say. And lovely audience. Well, thank you for giving me a chance and watching. I appreciate everyone who gave me a chance. We had a few newbies come by tonight, and a couple of people I haven't seen in a little while. I'm not sure if Jimmy's still out there, but if you are, I hope you also enjoyed yourself. Zombie Wolf says, thank you for the stream, Marie. Good night, everyone. I'm so ready for this day to be over. Go shut your eyes and sleep. I might come back to this one because I feel like I only kind of touched on it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. If I have ideas. And of course, if there's something you want me to come back to that I've done in the last couple of months and you think I should continue that playthrough or something, you can always let me know in the comments or in the chat here. And I'll consider it because for like a year and a half, I've done completely brand new games every week. But I do think that there are some games that are probably worth going back to. Anyways, that's enough of me. And of course, you know, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.